Welcome, friends. Welcome to this multi-part blog series for implementing the reference architecture for enterprise collaboration platform. I have started with open source version for such a platform, and I call it as SumApp. You could find more details about the initiative and a reference implementation at my website here, samapp.com. Um, the target architecture requires a combination of components. If you look at this diagram, it has a lot of components. We would try to make a video series in which I target one component in a single blog series so that you understand more about how to implement such a reference architecture in your own way. You could also join me for contributing to one of these. At the moment, I am looking for enthusiast application developers and engineers who has similar vision like me, or you could also help me get compute resources for finally deploying one such architecture. The focus of today's blog is a video blog is more on the implementation of a stream server. yeah the stream server basically is a component which enables an application user interface to continuously listen to backend data and notify the end user with the latest snapshot. I have a running implementation of this. You can visit the website here and find ways to access the application, and you should then see such an implementation. So not taking much of your time, let me jump directly to the first part, talking about how to implement real-time communication between client and server. When I say client, I'm talking specifically about the user interface component of the client paradigm. So let's start with the various techniques that are prevalent today to implement such a communication technique. So let's start with the first one, mostly used for not so modern user interfaces and browsers, where we are limited with the capability of browser. So this is one of the oldest technique to implement bidirectional communication. So think of a client and a server, and more than one clients are connected with a server, and action taken by one client affects the data that the other client sees. So how do we ensure that the client gets the latest snapshot of the application data? So how does the pattern start? So as we know about typical client-server communication, um, and the HTTP calls, a client initiates communication by sending a call to the server and gets a response from the server back to the client with the data now. Interestingly, as you can see, the data that the client gets is in response to the call, right? If meanwhile another client has influenced the application data, this client now is out of sync with the server. In order to get the latest data, the client continuously polls the server at a fixed interval depending on the network bandwidth, depending on how much data can a client crunch and so on. So in that case, let's say if the frequency is 10 seconds, so after every 10 seconds, the client will call the server again with the request for new data, and the server would respond back. This way, this is the easiest technique to implement a bidirectional communication. The only trouble here is the polling interval and the nature of communication. So it could happen that between multiple polls of a client-server communication, there has been no update in the backend data. In such a case, still the client is sending the call and consuming the bandwidth, right? Um, Such a technique can be implemented in any user interface in browser. Typically in HTML, you have a concept in JavaScript. You have a concept of timeout, which basically calls a JavaScript function with a timeout set on the browser window. Second technique for bidirectional communication or real-time communication between client server is called BOSH. BOSH stands for bidirectional streams over synchronous HTTP. As the name suggests, bidirectional stream means that the data could originate both from client and a server, and this is implemented using synchronous HTTP. When I say synchronous HTTP, it means that a client makes a call to the server and server responds back. Meanwhile, the client is blocking to the response. This is one of my favorite technique, as it is quite a hack, and as a computer science engineer, it always fascinates me how interesting things can be hacked from available options. So let's look at what happens in this technique. So as usual, client originates the communication by making a call to the server, and server if has any update for the client would respond back with the results, and the moment client gets the results, a client would make another call immediately to the server to fetch new results. But this time, since nothing has happened on the server, uh, this call would be blocked, or you could say this call is pending, as if the HTTP call is consuming a lot of time. So what you see is effectively we have implemented uh, a bidirectional stream, because the moment, let's start with the first call. So client wanted to get the first snapshot of the results, so it calls the server uh, and gets the results back. Then it processes the results and immediately makes a new call. And if this in this while, if the server has results, the new call would respond back with the results. But if the server doesn't have uh, any new records for the client, the server would be just blocking the thread, which essentially means like the client is listening to the new results. So the key here is the moment client gets results from the server, it would make the next call, and the call will be pending as long as there are new changes. Pretty simple protocol, but is a very interesting one and has been used widely across many video conferencing applications, IoT applications, and so on. The third approach is the most advanced one here from the protocol point of view, is called WebSocket, which basically is the latest specification for communication client and server, uh, introducing bidirectional communication natively in the design itself. So this is a new protocol parallel to TCP/IP, which allows the client and server to exchange messages between them, right? You could know if you but it depends on what kind of browser and the web server that you have. Let's look at the most frequently used ones. Let's say from the browser side, Chrome, and on the server side, if you have a Tomcat server. So by design, these two supports native WebSocket. So it would mean that the client and server, when a first call is made from client to server, the server would do let's call that as open WebSocket call. At this moment, the server would do certain housekeeping, which means establishing the network identity of the client, and would then keep a WebSocket connection open, which is more like a envelope for then passing messages between client and server. In this protocol, server could initiate such a communication and would trigger event on the client side to process the communication that has just reached from server. At the same time, the client can as well send data to the this server. So by nature, you have a bidirectional flow. The last technique in this series is called server sent events, which is an abstraction built on top of long connections. So think of this as an implementation which is a hack on top of streaming, let's say, a long file. So whenever you are downloading or streaming a video or downloading a huge chunk file, it would open the connection between client and server, in which every after a certain point in time, a new chunk of data arrives from the server. As the name suggests, it's only a unidirectional flow from server to the client. So whenever a connection is established, it would mean from timeline point of view a long running connection with server sending chunks of data at appropriate intervals, right? Not really a bidirectional technique, but if you combine the server sent events along with the normal API calls, then you get a mechanism where you can exchange messages between a client and a server. There are certain limitations with server sent events, like I mentioned, and most of them originate from the underlying implementation on which this has been hacked. So like I said, it sounds and is very similar to how a streaming connection is established. So if you look at that, you would naturally understand the limitations here. So whatever happens in this technique, any data that the client, the data max which can be sent to the server from client has to be passed in the initial URL, in the query string, or in the cookies, and so on. And then from there on, everything that the server has to compute from this information that has been passed from the client happens only from the URL. So which means you cannot send something sensitive, you cannot send custom headers and all that. Everything has to be sent in the URL, and the authentication information has to be passed in cookie. And that's where you have challenges with the browsers and the web servers do not support or do not allow cookies from security point of view. So looking at all these techniques, we see the closest that we get is WebSocket, that allows by nature bidirectional communication. Of course, BOSH is also an interesting one, but that requires a lot of tweaking, a lot of implementation headache that as an application developer one would find as an overhead. As a computer engineer, you would like that as an interesting challenge to be solved. But from the application development point of view, one would like to have a cleaner interface, and that what WebSocket provides. Now that we have selected WebSocket as our reference implementation from protocol point of view, let's look at certain challenges. WebSocket from an OSI model point of view lies in the transport layer, which means the the delivery of reliable messages is guaranteed. However, anything on top of that has to build has to be built in the application. For example, authentication and techniques to do authentication, session management and additional session attributes, introducing API calls, marshalling of messages, and so on. So from a client server perspective, a typical WebSocket implementation is initiated by the client to send the uh, uh, first message for establishing the identity of the user, and the server has to then manage certain attributes which would identify the client and keep them in the in this in the session buffer, uh, and then the messages can be exchanged between the client and the server. The updates follow from server to the client, and the actions originate from client to the server. However, since these are just the messages with their payload exchange between the server and client, the differentiation between type of messages and the schema of what needs to be passed into the messages. For example, if there has been an update at the server side, the only way the server can propagate this information is by broadcasting to all the clients or broadcasting to an individual client. Information, when the client is ready to consume such information, has to be implemented at the application level and requires significant implementation. What that means is to have a sophisticated subscription management using the native WebSocket protocol requires applications to do some heavy lifting here. So what is the workaround? Okay, I forgot to mention an important aspect about the WebSocket, as this is limited by the capabilities of the browser and the web server. Not all the web servers and the browsers available today or historically available allows using WebSocket. So what's the way around? So if you see, from the subscription management point of view, one has to do significant implementation, and from the reach in terms of user browsers, also a lot of implementation or some options need to be evaluated. At this point, we have alternatives to WebSocket. One of them being SockJS. SockJS is basically a library which enables application to consume WebSocket or WebSocket-like interface without worrying about underlying browsers and web servers. So one has to so for the browsers that support WebSocket, SockJS directly uses WebSocket, and for the browsers which do not support WebSocket, the SockJS would emulate WebSocket, leaving the application programmer or application developer to build the application by consuming or assuming that the WebSocket is in place. SockJS does this by using various fallback options when WebSocket is not available. These fallback implementations we have already seen as the techniques in our first part of this session, where we checked polling, wash, and server-side event and XHR streaming as ways of communicating between client and server in bidirectional manner. So SockJS basically implements these for the browsers and the servers, web servers, where WebSocket is not natively available. Having said that, we still have a lot to do for implementing such real-time communication. I mentioned specifically about the need for implementing a sophisticated subscription management, right? A sophisticated handshake. All this building in a web application would require everybody to reinvent the wheel. So we have Stomp to rescue. What does STOMP stands for? STOMP stands for, it stands for simple, and some people call it streaming, simple text-oriented messaging protocol. What it does is it basically uses the underlying WebSocket interaction pattern with or without SOCJS to implement a messaging protocol at the application layer. When I say messaging protocol at the application layer, it gives us answers to those challenges that we saw in beginning, aspects about implementing a handshake, where a client and server exchanges messages to establish identity of each other and negotiating the communication parameters. Second part, as an application developer, you would build things in the programming language. Let's look at Java for the time being. We have everything in Java classes, and marshalling underlying binary message from these Java objects is tricky things. Stomp handled this for us. In the end, it has a sophisticated session management which allows us to ensure that required session attributes are derived using in the initial phase of handshake and then are available later on in a secure manner for all the communication. So you see a set of snippets on your screen. Stomp implements all kind of communication by virtue of passing messages. These messages are either commands or result of the commands. So for example, to initiate a handshake, the client has to send a connect stomp command to the server, and then server would do certain processing in response to the command. Each command has a message payload. In the snapshot that you see here, the client has sent a stomp command and the server is trying to establish the identity of the client, and this is happening by using a standard authorization header in HTTP, and an authentication is via JWT token. So the server decodes the JWT token and extracts user principal and can also extract other aspects from the token or determine additional attributes by triggering more messages in response. Once the server is satisfied and has acknowledges a response to the stomp command would send a connected message. If not, the server would send an error stomp message to the client. On the other snippet that you see is the subscription management. Stomp requires the application to do any communication in terms of endpoint messages, which are more or less like API calls, or subscriptions, either in form of topics and queues. Topics are broadcasted to all the users, and queues are for individual users, which could then further be extended to individual session of user, right? So in this case, I have two subscription calls where I have a user listening to set all the collaborations which he's authorized on, and the second one updates on a collaboration with a given ID, and the last part is then handling the unsubscription when the user moves away from the user interface. In detail about the subscription management, the first one that you see here is a message endpoint, which is simulating an API file from the client, and response is sent to the user back from the collaboration object. The marshalling and marshalling is handled by Stomp. Second one is where a client is subscribing to queue, which means something specific to a user, listening on the list of collaborations that are available for the user. As you can see, you have something called XSR, which is an encapsulation of all the data lying inside the session. for this user. The last one is an unsubscribe call. When the user moves away from screens where the collaborations are displayed, one has to ensure that an unsubscription happens, so then we are not sending irrelevant messages to the user. So that covers implementing a real-time communication. So our winner is using a series of libraries. Start with WebSocket, not natively but with SockJS, and use Stomp abstraction on top. This could be readily done if you have a Spring-based project. Uh, um, in Spring-based project using Stomp as the message protocol, and you can later on extend this example also to cover a message broker with multiple message originators and multiple message consumption paradigm. So that concludes our real-time communication between client and server video blog. I hope you liked it. In the coming sessions, we would look at the other aspects of building some app kind of collaboration platform. Here we would look at how to implement a DB change listener. Like in this case, we kept on emphasizing on the application updates to the user. In the next series, we will say how such an application update is determined, right? So how do we listen to DB changes? Multiple techniques, for example, triggers, entity listeners in case of JPA, and the concept of producer consumer pattern, that is the underlying pattern for blocking for a change and notifying of a change. Thank you. Have a nice day and stay tuned.